And it's at hints. Once we started looking for lore hints and clues in more than just the games, we knew that we were going to be in for some extreme buffoonery with this series. I mean, like, looking in the game files is one thing, okay? People do that all the time, especially for popular games. But once we had to start looking in the source code for Scott's different websites, and then everything that followed that, we knew that there was nowhere safe from his tricks. We learned multiple things thanks to the fast facts found in FNAF AR's files. We know that after Sister Location, Baby gets into a fight with the rest of Ennard and gets kicked off the island because of the source code. We got so many 8s and 7s before the release of FNAF 4 that we found a real-life pizza place on Google Maps, and we were looking so deep we ended up finding the original names to files to find the name of Vanny before it was even released. So yeah, needless to say, it's certainly been a wild ride since we saw those 8s and 7s in the source code, and then it only got more intense. Can't wait to see where this series goes with the hints next. Oh, probably just scrolling them on the inside of my eyelids. In 9, hiding spot. How the absolute living hell did anyone end up getting away with this? Like, the smell of rotting bodies inside of animatronics would ruin the atmosphere. The heat of the animatronics moving as well, that would just speed up the decomposition, and the animatronics are in front of people every single day. And they even started complaining that the animatronics were leaking blood and mucus and were, quote, smelling like death. If this was real, and William getting away with this wasn't important for the plot of life, he would have been cut instantly. Like, oh, we never found the bodies of these kids. How about we look in these leaking animatronics? Because, you know, they're leaking blood and mucus and smelling like death. Oh, wow, look at that. There's bodies here. We found those missing kids. Afton, you're under arrest. Boom. Like, instantly. I don't get how this wasn't an open and shut case. Like, straight up. He was so goddamn stupid. Like, he shouldn't have made it past the first game. His plan is a whole dumpster fire of bad ideas. But the entirety of the series would be different had he not hid the bodies in the animatronics. So, well played, I guess, William. And at 8, betrayal. Top 10 worst anime betrayals, but it's FNAF. In Sister Location, we thought we finally had a nice animatronic. The first nice one. Like basically a prototype of Glamrock Freddy. Baby was giving us tips on how to survive, she helped us get through Belora's gallery, she really seemed like she wanted us to live. But then, what do we get for trusting her? Scooped and stuffed just like a Thanksgiving turkey. Sounds like my last relationship. That sounded weird. That's not what I meant. I didn't mean that. I meant, like, that's what we get for trusting her. This was probably one of the most brutal things to happen to a character in the entirety of the series. And it's all because we trusted Baby. Okay, she made us feel safe, gave us confidence, prevented us from getting killed, only to use our body as a skin suit and then fill us full of Ennard's animatronic parts, and then also just leave Ennard not even a game later. Okay? This is why I don't trust Glamrock Freddy. Baby is legit one of the reasons that I have trust issues now, and that's saying something. Like, holy damn. I could have sworn Glamrock Freddy was going to do the exact same thing. Like, lead us down to Afton, then pull a psych, I've been working for this dickbag of a Mother Hubbard this whole time. Time to die. Haha! But he didn't. However, thanks to Baby, I still think that he's going to do the long con and that he's going to betray us in the next game. And without that, then we wouldn't have thought that McMichael is a robot and then the whole there's 2 purple guys now. Okay, it was an important moment, okay? And it's 7, true ending. The true ending of Security Breach is seemingly the scariest part of the game. This one is unlocked by finding the secret elevator in the section in Roxy's Raceway. It's down the stairs from where you find the test driver head. This requires your Freddy to have the Monty Claus and the Chica voice box, I guess. However, it is also possible that you can only get through it with the voice box if you like call Freddy to you. He can like appear on the other side of the gate and then smash through it because he's required to. But yeah, you have to do this after you stay to complete the game. You have to deal with a boss battle with one go, okay, without saving. So that's going to be a pretty rough time since save states are disabled after you could have escaped. After making your way into Burntrap's area, Freddy will be taken over by Burntrap, and it's up to Gregory to defeat him using one of the 3 monitors and then pressing buttons to burn him. Players will also need to avoid the animatronic enemies that come for Gregory and use the doors to temporarily lock them out. When Springtrap is finally burnt for the final time, the blob, which was the whole tentacle monster thing, will attack him, making sure that he doesn't get free. At least, we hope that that's the case. Freddy and Gregory will be shown escaping and then sitting on a hill together, which is the first time a character has run away with an animatronic, and where an animatronic has not been a bad guy who ultimately betrays us in the end. So, yeah, that's significant, okay? Don't question me. And at 6, the one you should not have killed. The introduction of the one you should not have killed is probably the most confusing character ever. While we have had more confusing moments, the argument over who the one you should not have killed, aka the vengeful spirit isn't over. But no matter if it's Cassidy or Crying Child, the vengeful spirit was introduced as an explanation as to why Afton always comes back. A spirit that was possessing him and keeping him alive, which I called. I called that Afton was still living in the Springtrap suit, but all of you didn't believe me. And here we are. He was alive in the suit. And even after that, for some reason, you don't believe that I'm right about Crying Child being the one you should not have killed instead of Cassidy. Despite my over, like, 350 different videos on FNAF. Okay, I feel like I know enough about this series, especially with the calls that I've made in the past. Okay, I was one day off on the security breach release date, one day, and you still don't think I know enough about this series. Come on, people, come on, just accept me as your overlord, and this would all be so much easier. Halfway through into number 5, Dream Theory. The actual concept of dream theory is nothing new to any series, really. The idea that everything we've seen could just be a dream is possible with any form of media. But when it comes to FNAF, this idea made a lot of people upset, and I guess that's understandable. With everything being a dream, it in essence makes the lore worthless. So the hours and hours people spent trying to work it out being pointless if it was true. However, if this was the intention, we never knew, since in FNAF 4's ending we see a locked box with the now infamous line of perhaps some things are best left forgotten for now. And that for now has been around 6 years. Currently, according to Scott, from what I've seen, nobody has actually solved FNAF 4 yet, but then again, I don't think Scott knows who we are, so maybe I have and he just doesn't know it. But with the game surrounding a kid in a coma who's experiencing nightmares after getting chomped on by a seriously overpowered animatronic jaw, I think us getting the idea that this could be indicating that everything is a dream is a little on par for what the actual course was at that point. We were so invested at this point that we actually started scanning the source code, and again, found a real-world pizzeria thanks to the multiple 8s and 7s, and I still don't know if that was accidental or not. I don't think anyone does. I don't know if Scott actually knew about that or not. Maybe he was the one who put that on Google Maps. And at 4, soft reboot. The soft reboot the series is undergoing at the moment, and more so at the time that Help Wanted was released, was something that we had never seen before, well, at least in the FNAF series, and seemingly started the trend of characters from games becoming sentient and trying to escape the confines of games and come into the real world. That, you know, we see play out through the FNAF games after Afton becomes sentient code. But even then, the next game seems to throw that idea away while we're keeping what happened there. Or at least in the mobile port canon with Princess Quest. It's a real issue, okay? The real issue comes from the next soft reboot they attempted to do in Security Breach again, with Afton now having a physical form. Again, his death being a mystery, and the game setting up the next owner for wherever they want to go. And while I understand that, I wish you could have just, like, given it one path. You know, like, at least, like, just killed William off for us permanently. I'm still upset about that. Getting close to the end into number 3, Springtrap. Being the genius behind some of the most advanced robotic technology in his universe, we expect a lot from William Afton. He's the suit technician, but he's also the main killer. So, he should really know what he's doing, right? Well, apparently not, since after discovering that the original 5 animatronics were possessed, he disassembles them to learn their secrets. This inadvertently releases the spirits of the original 5 victims, causing William to panic, which is fairly reasonable since firstly they're freaking ghost kids, and ghost kids are the scariest kind of ghost, and also because they're ghost kids that he killed. So this absolute animatronic genius, the mastermind behind everything, the technician that handles the suit maintenance and is explaining explained to every employee the proper procedure for these spring lock suits, including the spring bodysuit that he uses to kill, ends up climbing inside the suit in a panic in an attempt to make himself feel more powerful and maybe scare the ghost kids off. However, since he's so smart, he didn't notice the moisture in the room, the leaking ceiling, the puddles on the floor, causing the spring locks that were active at this moment since it was in suit mode to fail, which would have killed him had he not been possessed by the vengeful spirit. But I mean, without Springtrap, we don't have FNAF 3, and we don't have like literally any other game after that, so kind of important. And ultimately, in number 2, FNAF 4. Not only is the spring locking important, and on top of embarrassing, but the next game, FNAF 4, is one of the most pivotal moments in the series. After what Scott intended to be the original end to the series after 3 games, he came out with a 4th after the community was disappointed with the Springtrap jump scare. So lo and behold, we get the Nightmare animatronics, and the story of Crying Child, who still doesn't have an official name, since the N in Evan is a stretch and the whole Gregory thing is still up in the air. However, this kid really changed the way we looked at the series, from thinking that William was a grieving father to, after looking closely, that he instead designed these animatronics to kill, and the mysteries of this game. What's inside the box? Who's the one who says I will put you back together? And really, what does it mean? It's been like 6 years after the game's release, and we've still been unable to definitively answer those questions. And that's why the series has lived on for so long, okay? The amount of mystery and intrigue is just too much for us as humans to ignore. As humans, we want answers. It explains a lot about society. But let me tell you, those who don't worry about FNAF have it made. I guess ignorance is bliss. They don't have to do this. And finally, into number 1, live stream. After MatPat's big FNAF 4 theory relating to dream theory and how the entire series might be a dream, something later disproven by Scott, so thank God for that, there was still a series of cryptic messages that made us think a whole load of crazy for a while. And you know what? Maybe we were right at the time, but as the series grows, so does the story. It's like a living organism adapting to changes in its environment. Why would Toy Chica be missing her beak? And 4 games, 1 story could have made sense back then, but now we're not entirely sure if they have an impact anymore, since it's definitely more than 4 games. At the time, we thought that this meant that Crying Child was Michael Afton, something that honestly kind of made sense, in the weird FNAF way of making sense. But now, we've decided that it's not the case, and honestly, I think that this is the way the series will stay. Not about the Mike thing per se, but specifically that we will never know what's really going on, and that the story will instead be what we as fans make it instead of what Scott might have originally intended. Sure, he can help gesture us in a better direction that would make more sense with what he wanted and what he has planned, but I don't think that we'll ever know what Scott originally thought the story of the series would be. Hence why when Dawko asked him which FNAF 3 ending was canon, Scott said he wouldn't answer. And at 10, the discovery of Remnant. The discovery of Remnant is only really described to us in the original novel series, with William learning about the souls of the missing children being basically infused into the endoskeletons of the original 5 animatronics. He melts them down to make the fun times, but this is when his goal changes. Originally, he, from what we can tell with our limited information, was just killing for the sake of it. However, now he had a purpose. He wanted to find the key to eternal life, to immortality, whether it be to bring maybe an extra child back, or to keep himself in the land of the living. The moment William discovered Remnant, he totally changed his game plan. However, that's the importance to the FNAF story. To us, it could be when we discovered how Remnant was made in the Fazbear Frights books, when Dr. Phineas Taggart discovered that agony was the most powerful human emotion, and that the act of possessing something in the FNAF world was just your extreme agony latching onto a nearby object, which explains why it happened to the children, and then to William, which I'll talk about later on. And at 9, Missing Children's Incident. The Missing Children's Incident is really what started the FNAF series. It's also a tongue twister. It's a mystery that we all gravitated towards when we started looking into the first game, and it's the incident that really popularized the series, aside from it being terrifying. The incident has gone down in history as one of the scariest and most convoluted things in recent years, with whole threads being dedicated to why or how it happened, along with how William got away with it, since the suits were literally leaking body fluids like a rotting corpse would, and no one checked them out. It's incredible how far the series has come from just that one moment, and it being the catalyst for everything else. That makes it pretty important and very deserving of our number 9 spot. And before we get any further, if you're enjoying this video or just like the FNAF content in general, be sure you're hitting that like button on this one and all the videos to come. It really helps us out and it lets us know what you want to see more of. And it ain't scooping. The first scooping of the series was that of Elizabeth Afton, the Afton family daughter. The one that was probably going to make a lot of mistakes in high school and college, but at least she wouldn't have been as bad as her father. But then she went and ignored him, resulting in her getting scooped by Baby and getting crushed, thus possessing the animatronic. Which is freaking terrifying to begin with, but I think that Scott was trying to teach his kids to listen to him, honestly. This event, while not the start of William's killing spree, is a pivotal moment in the series as well, because while he discovered the remnant already, now he had a personal stake in the matter. His kid had possessed an animatronic. And the key to life in this remnant was also the key to keeping his daughter alive, and making sure that she could live forever, even if he used her to kill Henry in FNAF World, but that's beside the point. Her scooping is also what we believe made Crying Child scared of the animatronics and the inspiration behind the Nightmare animatronics' stomach mouths, which ended up coming into play during the Crying Child's death later in the timeline. Probably the same week, if we're being honest. Also, the FNAF series is like 3 or 4 years younger than Skyrim. That's it. And at 7, Scooping 2, Electric Boogaloo. Michael's scooping, however, defined the next parts of the series as a whole. We learn that he's working to right his father's wrongs, and we think that he's been doing it the whole time, even though it could have been Henry. Check the link in the iCard for the theory on that. But Michael's scooping was different. Instead of him dying, we see him get filled with Ennard and then used as a skin suit to walk around in the world. We see his skin rot or bruise as it turns purple, drawing enough attention that Ennard thinks it's a better idea to roam the sewers as a mess of animatronic parts. But then he lets us know that he's coming after his father, so much so that once he traps him in Pizzeria Simulator, he stays there to make sure the deed is done, but it's not. And Michael gave his life in order for his father's reign of terror to end, but is this the last time we've seen Michael, or is always coming back hereditary? Only time will tell. Maybe reincarnation is a thing in the FNAF series. It very well could be. Scott's just pulling things out at this point. And at 6, Springlocked. In FNAF 3, we watch as William Afton tries to save his own skin. He knows the animatronics are alive and tries to save himself by dismantling them in an effort to make sure they won't be able to, you know, stuff him into a furry suit. But in this action, as we see in the 8-bit minigames, he ends up releasing the souls of the characters. Well, I guess technically they aren't released, they just appear in an astral form or something, since they'd still be possessing the suits because he needs to melt them down. But yeah. This scares William because, you know, 5 of his murder victims are staring him down like Chica in a hot slice of pizza, so he does the one thing that he could think of, try and scare them back, by getting into the Spring Bonnie suit he used to lure them away in the first place. This suit makes him feel powerful, it's a confidence booster, it makes him feel like he's in control. A weird way to express a dom kink, but okay, I'm not judging. However, he does this so fast and the room was so moist and wet that instead of scaring them, he gets himself snapped. The spring locks fail and the suit shoots plenty of tiny and large bits of endoskeleton metal into his body, causing him to collapse and convulse, oozing blood like the kids in their suits. But this causes so much hassle because now, 30 years later, when he is set free, he can still kill. He isn't the frail old man that he should be. He has the strength of the animatronic behind him, and he's gonna use it. Halfway through number 5, Bite of 83. The Bite of 83, not to be confused with the Bite of 87, is one of the most confusing moments in a timeline sense. Like, we know what happened in 1983, but what happened to the crying child after? Does William indeed put him back together? Does he possess something? What happened to Crying Child? But this is an important moment too, because despite the confusion between 1987 and 1983, this would only drive William deeper into his madness, causing him to do unspeakable and unexpected things, like turn his son into a robot and give him false memories of killing his younger sibling so he wouldn't go back to a Freddy's location, naming the new robot version Michael, for instance. Or by just going on even more of a killing spree, not caring about the consequences of his actions because what else does he have to lose? And if Crying Child does end up possessing the security logbook or even Golden Freddy, then that only goes to serve this point too. The Bite of 83 is a horrific but important moment. And at 4, Happiest Day. The Happiest Day minigame from FNAF 3 was planned to be the end of the series. Scott said that the game was meant to be the last, but people were disappointed with the Springtrap jump scare, so he made FNAF 4, which makes sense now since it's pretty much an overcorrection. That's why those animatronics are so damn terrifying and horrific, and why FNAF 4 is listed as the end of the original FNAF story. The souls at the time of FNAF 3's release are in fact set free, hence the good and bad endings, but come FNAF 4 and more so Sister Location, we learn that this isn't the case, since the remnant metal used to make the fun times is actually made of the remnant from the original 5 kids, which causes some interesting plot holes but could help explain a lot. Like, the children's spirits could have been released, but the metal was still infused with their agony perhaps, allowing it to be more conductive for spirits, hence why Elizabeth possesses babies so quickly, or something along those lines, maybe? I don't know. The horrific implications of the original ending to the series make this one of the most important FNAF lore moments, especially if it had ended there. Imagine if it had. Imagine how simple the games would have been if it just ended in FNAF 3. And that was the ending. We set the spirits free and that was it. We were good. Didn't work. Getting close to the end of number 3, FNAF 6. FNAF 6 is another one of those ending sequences, where the series looks like it could have ended, and while slightly more convoluted, it would have been okay. We would have hammered out the rest eventually. The FNAF 6 ending, though, was indeed the end of multiple animatronics. Elizabeth, Charlotte, and Ennard were all released in the FNAF Fire, as well as Michael, who stays to burn, and Henry, who stayed so nobody would remember this place or this story. However, we know one escaped. Springtrap, or Scrap Trap, William Afton himself, managing to evade death once again, and it wouldn't be until later where we found out and understood how, and yet we figured he would be back. He always comes back, and now, with nobody to stand against him, he's free to do whatever he wants. Henry isn't fighting him, Michael isn't fighting him, they both thought he would burn, but he's free, as free as he can be while being stuck inside a video game world. For now. And ultimately, in number 2, The Man in Room 1280. While plenty of people brush these books off as just books, the story of The Man in Room 1280 is one of the most important pieces of lore we have gotten from this series. It answers a question that we've all had since FNAF 3. How does William keep surviving? How does he always come back? And while it may seem minuscule, this is the biggest hint that we've gotten in ages. Learning that William was possessed by the spirit of one of his victims explains more in the series than any Easter egg Scott had left us. I don't care that Funtime Foxy can mimic voices, or how the Scooper can inject a remnant. It mattered how William's signature line of "I always come back" is true, and this book delivered. It also explains how he came to possess a hard drive that got scanned into Help Wanted. It explains that since he was possessed, he was alive in FNAF 3, and that explains how he survived the fire in both FNAF 3 and FNAF 6. It showed us that everyone knows what he did despite not being convicted. It provided so much for us, and that makes it the most important piece of confirmed lore that we have. There is one moment that is more important, but we have nothing on it at the time of this recording. And that point is, finally, in number 1, the breaking point. The breaking point in this scenario is referring to the moment William started killing. We don't know when it was, we don't know why it was. To us, it's just always been a thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was an incident before that of the missing children's from the first game that was just his first kill. We don't know what drove him into killing, and there's no way that would have been the first, right? Nothing has been confirmed or even presented in the games. There are hypotheses that it was due to his wife or lover dying, perhaps due to childbirth, or that it was because one of his children died, but we know that can't be true unless he had another kid that we haven't seen, because he had designed animatronics to kill before his children died. There were really no indicators as to why he started on his mass killing spree. It could just be that he's insane and wanted to do it, or maybe he wanted to unlock the mysteries of life, or maybe it was just an accident the first time but then he got a taste for it. We don't know, and we don't even have any evidence to go off, so all of this is just hypothesis and guesswork. It can't even really be educated guesswork because we don't know enough about Afton himself to make a real connection. Like, we don't understand him as a person, if you kind of get what I'm saying. We know parts of his story, but we don't know what's in his brain, and that's what we would need to make an educated guess, at least from the crime shows I've watched. And at 10, don't run. What do you do if a group of bad guys is coming after you at a good pace and you have no way to defend yourself? You get the hell out of there faster than my dad trying to get milk, faster than William's wife left him, faster than me going outside when someone asks if I want to get Taco Bell. The fact that we're in this tiny office noise is pretty ridiculous when you think about it. Like, honestly, why would we stay in this room when we see on the security cameras that the animatronics aren't nearby? We can just like book it and be safe. Like, why isn't there a one-way emergency exit out of our office if this is such a hazard? We stay in this room, and that wouldn't happen in real life if you were in any sort of actual danger. In Game Lab, MatPat's old YouTube Red series, we saw him take on a real FNAF experience. However, when the animatronics were close, he didn't run away, he stayed in the office. Which could be used to say that since we consider that our safe space, we would do the same. But if our life was actually in danger, like mortal danger, we are gonna die danger, we would run like the wind, and not work there for 7 days before getting fired. Then at 9 animatronics. Now, ignoring the whole possession thing, since that still isn't real, I've seen no evidence of it, especially due to intense agony, the whole servos locking up so we need to let them roam free at night thing is complete and utter BS. Firstly, in a world where we can have shape-shifting animatronics and discs that emit such high-frequency sounds that they alter what we see, I'm supposed to believe that a servo motor is going to lock up? Secondly, why do they need to free roam in the first place? They just stand on a stage. A servo motor creates linear or circular motion, which is not the kind of movement the animatronics need. I mean, it could be, but if these are so complex that they can move on their own, why would they lock in the first place? Not to mention the whole, yeah, someone got bit on the head so we're gonna stop making them roam around freely. Like, why would you do that in the first place? Or the fact that kids literally tear Mangle to bits and then put her back together. Ironically, because, you know, put you back together. But still, it makes no sense. Before I continue on, can you do me a huge favor and hit that like button if you're enjoying the video or just the channel in general? And feel free to share this with a friend if you're so inclined. It really helps us out against the algorithm and lets us know what you want to see more of. And you know, helps me keep my job. Thank you. In a day, technology. Speaking of animatronics, what is up with the technology in this world? They're so advanced, but at the same time, they have the same tech that they would have in that era. The illusion discs are already crazy overpowered. Like, life is a perfectly balanced game with absolutely no exploits, but those things are absolutely nuts. And then there's the Funtime animatronics, where Baby literally stores a claw in her stomach and can capture children, and their AI is so advanced that Ballora can talk, and she isn't really possessed. Unless we go off the FNAF novels, and even if we did, it's from 5 different kids, so they would just be gargling. And the animatronics' ability to free roam is incredible. They were doing this before they got possessed as well, so their AI is incredibly advanced. Yet for some reason, they don't have smartphones or better computers. Like, NASA would be interested in the AI of these animatronics, so why is there other pieces of technology that are the same as they would normally be in that era? It makes no sense to me. And it's 7 wall tiles. FNAF 3 is a trippy game to say the least. With multiple different endings and a load of puzzles along the way, the supposed to be final game of the series takes some weird turns. But I think the most egregious offense is the freaking goddamn wall tiles. Why do you have to dial in a phone number on some panels in the wall in order to set souls of dead kids free? Like, what? Where did that come from, and why is nobody questioning this anymore? Like, the other games came out and we just forgot about this. Was it because the series was meant to be a dream but isn't anymore? Like, is it because William had left some weird security pad behind these tiles? Is it not real at all and we're just tripping balls? Because honestly, with the amount of hallucinations and fear we have, not to mention any sleep deprivation that could also be happening, it's entirely plausible that this just isn't real at all, and that these wall tiles, special minigames, and shadow Bonnie action figures we do see are just a result of multiple different issues. That, or it's the reason William started killing. Because, like, WTF. And at 6, limited power. The original difficulty of this game comes from the fact that you have limited power, at least in FNAF 1. This adds stakes since you can't just keep your doors closed the whole time, and you can't just keep the lights on outside. And it's explained to us, and just flat out told to us in the survival logbook, that the building has limited power after 12 AM. Why? That makes no sense. Absolutely none. Why would a building have restricted power after midnight? I've never heard of that before. And unless the franchise owner is extremely cheap and doesn't want more of an electricity bill, there would be no reason to set up a system that cuts you off. Plus, if that's the case, Why risk a more costly lawsuit in that case if someone does get hurt or dies because of the limited power? Even if you won and didn't have to pay, you still have to pay the lawyer fees, because by no means would any judge make someone who got injured at work pay for the company's fees. At least I'd hope not. Especially when the game takes place. Halfway through into number 5, FNAF AR. I've said it before and I will say it a million more times. Why is the company sending out animatronics that they know are dangerous? The whole point of FNAF AR is that the company is sending these animatronics to try and rebuild their reputation. Same thing with Help Wanted. But then they see that they're infected with a virus turning them hostile, but instead of recalling them like any normal company, they send out more animatronics, including multiple versions of the killer that caused them to lose their reputation in the first place. They did not think that it was just an older Bonnie model and decided to call it Springtrap. If that was the case, it would be listed in AR as Old Bonnie or Spring Bonnie, not Springtrap. They know exactly what they're doing and nobody has called them out yet. Companies will get in trouble for making a freaking tiny mistake in their game, but this company can get away with just letting people die? That's sus as hell. Purple is sus. And for business deals, the people behind the Fazbear Entertainment Company, whether it be some board of directors or William Afton, aren't the brightest bunch. The ideas are there, but they're not executed well. Why the living hell would hiring someone to make games about the tragedies that took place in your restaurants ever seem like a good idea? That shouldn't have worked in the slightest. The main concept of using a game to make fun of the deaths of kids is already pretty messed up. And while it seems to have worked in the FNAF universe, why did they ever try it? Those events now will never be lost in time. Those games are there forever. And if they're as popular as the games are in our world, there are people who made whole YouTube channels about the series. At least when YouTube comes out. When does YouTube come out in this world? Like, I know one kid said MatPat's line in one of the Fazbear Frights books, and then the book said, as his favorite YouTuber says, but like, when did that story take place? After 2005, or was YouTube around earlier in this timeline? Because if it is, am I still the host on Top 10 Gaming? I kinda wanna be canon in FNAF 2. And at 3, business expansion. When a company undergoes a tragedy like 5 missing children, you can usually assume that they're either going under or will never be the same. This would go for any company, but especially a company directed at kids. Like, if Chuck E. Cheese actually had this happen, nobody would be taking their kids there. But for some reason, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has not only been able to keep their doors open, but make them bigger, opening an entire shopping mall based on their characters. What the, like, how the actual hell did this happen? From having to shut down at the end of basically every FNAF game, to opening an entire mall-sized pizzaplex that has even more opportunities for your kids to get lost in? What the ever-loving crap happened to make that work? This has to be the most ridiculous form of logic in this series. I'm not even exaggerating. I don't care how many comments say that they would love a real FNAF. If it was actually real and there were actual deaths, you'd be scared crapless to go there. You wouldn't actually go unless you were an adult with no kids, or a YouTuber trying to put together the mystery of what really happened, and to see if their pizza is recycled. Penultimately, in a number 2, investigation. Speaking of trying to find out what really happened, why didn't the cops? We know that there was an investigation thanks to the Midnight Motorist minigame from FNAF 6, but they never found the bodies, even though the animatronics smelt like death and were oozing mucus and blood. So much that they had to actually shut down according to the FNAF 1 news clippings. So what gives? Why did they close their investigation so quickly? Or why didn't they look into the suits when it was reported that they were leaking blood? I don't care if it's the 80s and the police don't have the tech they do now. If a place you were investigating missing people but found no bodies had something that is leaking blood, you go check that shit out. You don't just leave it behind and say, that can't be related. Who the hell thinks like that? It's so disgusting to me. And honestly, even though it's a game that has to have a reason to continue, they should have done more. I get that if they had found the bodies, we wouldn't have gotten so many games, but sometimes it's quality over quantity. Guess they had to meet their arrest quota for the month or something, so they just dropped this case like it was cold. Finally, in at number 1, doors. You knew this was going to be on the list. I hate the goddamn mother-loving doors in this game. Why do they open when the power is out? That makes no sense. Even if it's an electromagnet, like everyone keeps saying in the comments whenever I bring this up, those require power to turn on. So if anything, it would be costing power to keep the doors open rather than closed. Gravity doesn't work in reverse. If the magnet is off, the door would just fall down. I get that it's supposed to be for gameplay purposes, but what in this universe makes this make sense? There is no conceivable way that these doors should be working in that way, but they do. They do, and it makes me mad. Why do you do this to me? Sky Daddy Scott, why? I really want merch that says Sky Daddy Scott though, for real. That would be hilarious. Just like Scott's avatar on like a cloud. Yes.
Number 10, Night 5 phone call. It's possible that the creepy phone call we get on Night 5 of FNAF 1 is just there to creep us out. And if that is its only meaning or purpose, I would say it does its job pretty well. But of course, that is never enough for us FNAF fans. We need it to mean something. Why does it happen? And why only on Night 5? Is there a hidden message somewhere in there? While many fans have broken down this recording, lots of theories claim that it's saying something different than other theories. It doesn't seem we've universally been able to agree on the words being said or the meaning behind them, if there really was any meaning at all. We still don't have a confirmed answer for this creepy call, where it came from, or what it's trying to tell us. Is it a demonic message? Are the children trying to reach out? Or is it just there to scare FNAF 1 players? And it really does mean nothing. Number 9, Purple Guy. So one of the unexplained parts of FNAF is something that I feel like we have been trying to justify for years, but that also might just be as simple as a game design explanation. This one, I guess, is sort of explained, but it's never been explicitly confirmed by Scott Cawthon, I don't believe. So because I feel like it's interesting and we don't know for sure, I figured I'd include it here. In the mini games, William Afton appears as a purple guy. This became so synonymous with the character that one of his aliases even became Purple Guy. But why does he appear to be purple? Some claim this is because William Afton is an undead figure. He died, he rotted, turning purple, much like Michael did in Sister Location. He also looks purple in that game as well, in the mini games. If we even want to call those mini games, I don't know, the mini walking about. And so, because William Afton's corpse is all decomposed, that's how he appears. But what about in FNAF 3? We also see a mini game where he seems to be alive as we watch as he gets into the Springtrap suit, running from what we assume are the ghosts of his victims. Once in the suit, it's evident that the spring locks have malfunctioned, puncturing his body and killing him. So if he doesn't die till after, how could he be purple before? Why would he appear purple before his death in these games? Well, some have theorized it's to make the character stand out. A Redditor by the username of Stray Dogs actually suggested that it is actually because of the style of old Atari 2600 games. William Afton is actually a shadowy figure. Those old games usually only had a black backdrop. So for anything that was supposed to be shadowy, you would use purple or something to avoid it blending into the background. I think that's actually a pretty good explanation. So I know I said unexplained, but that one might be explained because I just think it makes sense. But let me know what you think. Is it rotting, or is it old game styles, or do you still feel like we don't have an answer for it yet? And friends, before we move on to the next spot, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up. If you love FNAF videos, make sure you show us you love them so we can make more content for you. Number 8, Ballora's Song. Something that continues to haunt me is Ballora's Song. Many fans believe that Ballora is a stand-in for William Afton's deceased or simply ex-wife, who left him in some kind of permanent capacity, whether through death or just by choice. Ballora's song that she sings seems to play into this theory very, very well. Ballora sings about wanting someone to come join her, someone who is secluded, seemingly in mourning, and who has no joy left in their life. The idea here is that Ballora is echoing the feelings of Afton's wife, who felt that William was lost to her because of his work, and possibly because of an accident that caused them to lose a child, also adding distance between them. Ballora sings, "All I see is an empty room, no more joy, an empty tomb. It's so good to sing all day, to dance, to spin, to fly away." If Ballora was built to represent William's wife, who left him after the loss of a child, then these lyrics seem to make a lot of sense. However, we still have no real idea if Ballora is meant to represent Mrs. Afton, or if William was ever married at all. I'm still contemplating whether or not his children really are his biological children and not kids that he adopted, created, or potentially kidnapped. What do you think? Is Ballora meant to represent Mrs. Afton, or is she just another of William's twisted creations, meant to just creep us out? Number 7, Crying Child? Children? One thing we still aren't sure of is who exactly the crying child is. What's more, we have a few different crying children that pop up throughout the series. Usually when we talk about the crying child, we're talking about the character who appears in FNAF 4. But for the purpose of this point, what I'm actually curious about is your theories on the crying child or children who appear in the games previous to number 4. You can see hints of them in the games prior, but you'll definitely have spotted them in FNAF 3. There they show up prominently in mini games, including in the Happiest Day party minigame where the crying child there must be given cake. Who are these crying children hinted at in previous games? Are all these appearances a cry back to the crying child? Or are they all different children who just happen to all be miserable? Are they all victims? I have so many questions about everything. I'm like, this probably, but also we still don't know, so what's going on? Number 6, the end of Sister Location. One of the endings for Sister Location, not the true ending, but still, shows us that despite us managing to survive the night and escape Ennard, if that's the ending you get, avoiding getting scooped, even when we make it safely home to watch our soaps, we're not truly safe. Instead, we are pursued by Ennard, who somehow manages to escape the facility without us, even though that was the whole point of needing to scoop us in the first place, was to be able to escape. And also, miraculously, either finds a way to follow us home or find out somehow where we live. I guess they could have our address on file at Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, but still, how did they get out? What? Number 5, it's me. It's me is a phrase that pops up all over the place in FNAF 1 and is classified as being a hallucination. But what does it mean and where does it come from? There are a wide variety of theories on this subject, but many of them differ. One thing that many have in common is they believe the words "it's me" are coming from the animatronics, but whether the phrase is intended to be malicious, reassuring, or simply is some kind of plea for help from the spirits that haunt those animatronics remains to be decided on. What's more, these are just theories about the phrase. We still don't really have any definitive proof that tells us exactly what "it's me" is meant to refer to and why it shows up all over the place in FNAF 1, from Foxy's sign here and there to background posters to simply appearing on your screen in accompaniment with either Freddy or Bonnie. That is, of course, if you get that glitch, because it doesn't always show up, but it can. Number 4, Crying Child. While many still believe the Crying Child is the protagonist of FNAF 4, we don't really know much about them, or if they truly are the protagonist we're meant to be playing as in that game. The Crying Child is often thought to be the third child of William Afton, but none of their appearances have ever explained who exactly they are, so we are still left even wondering if this is true. I also feel like we don't even really know for sure if they're the third child in terms of like the order of the siblings. I don't know. You can let me know if you feel like we have lots of evidence to prove something like that, but I don't feel like we have enough evidence even for that yet. Most of what we know about them is based on theories we've all come up with to make sense of their importance and their existence. Why they have been so prominently featured as a character still remains to be seen. Are they actually in Afton? Is this some kind of red herring meant to mislead us? Could they somehow be Michael Afton at a younger age? Or could they somehow have some kind of tie there? Or perhaps William Afton, but younger? I don't think that makes sense with dates, but the dates that appear in the game really only make the mystery more confusing, as it's very hard for us to pinpoint a timeline in regards to the potential siblings' dates of birth and death, or just the dates of anything in general. It's very confusing. I'm confused. Are you confused? Number 3, Shadow Bonnie and Golden Freddy. Why do Shadow Bonnie and Golden Freddy crash your game? This is a mystery that still seems unexplained. I guess we could just easily explain it away with the fact that antagonists in the game each simply have their own thing that they do, their own way of punishing you, and this is Shadow Bonnie's and Golden Freddy's way of doing so. If you are not proactive enough, that is. Still, it seems very meta in comparison to some of the other punishments, as this punishment isn't something that happens to the character you're playing as in-game, like losing power, being unable to access your screens, doors getting stuck open or closed, and things like that. But instead, it's something that happens outside of the in-game environment, affecting you as a player, not you as a character in-game. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Does it mean anything? Number 2, getting scooped. A strange moment in terms of what we see happen in-game versus what would really happen in real life can be experienced in Sister Location. In this game, at the end of your true story, your character, Eggs Benedict, who we believe to be Michael Afton, gets scooped. Ennard then wears your skin as a human disguise, allowing them to leave the Circus Baby and Entertainment rental facility. Afterwards, the protagonist rejects the insides of Ennard after outwardly rotting. Being that they have no guts and should be dead, this would, in theory, be the end of their story, because now they literally have nothing inside them. They just upchucked it. They would crumble to the ground and finally be 100% dead. I mean, technically getting scooped should also make you 100% dead, but in either case, That's not what happens. Instead, you hear Circus Baby's voice reassuring you that you won't die, and we see good ol' Eggs Benny come back to life. How is this possible? We still have no idea. Though I would, once again, like to use this opportunity to assert my Afton's children are lifelike humanoid animatronics theory. Anyone? Anyone taking that theory? I think it's a pretty good theory. Number 1, the murders. One of the greatest mysteries is also one of the most important ones, especially when it comes to understanding the most prominent character in the franchise, William Afton. The murders that he committed still baffle players. We also don't even really know if he committed all of the murders. Recently, there has been some doubt based on evidence found in the Fazbear Frights books as to whether or not he could actually have maybe an accomplice, possibly Vanny, and even more ridiculously, I don't know, possibly a time-traveling Vanny? I don't know. Why William Afton seeks to kill is still a huge unexplained question in the game, and one that is crazy, crazy important, because it would also help to explain ideally so many other things that William has done. The murderous events that have been referred to in the lore, and the why behind them remains one of the most puzzling and most important mysteries that FNAF has given us.
And it's in FNAF 3. After FNAF 3's ending, when we learned about the fire, we thought that was it. We, for at least 20 seconds until people started brightening the image of the final screen, which is just classic FNAF by now. And then that's when we saw Springtrap sitting in the shadows behind the stuffed animal that was in the image of the news article about the fire. Now, I have no idea how the photographer didn't see that, or if William has the news outlets working for him too, or whatever, but this is absolutely terrifying. And it's really what started us down the rabbit hole of the several hoops that we would have to jump through to find more clues and lore. Brightening this one image made us have to comb through the files of mobile games. Anyway, this image set us on a path to thinking that William survived the fire and that this would not be the last FNAF game. I don't know if this was supposed to be, or if this was just an Easter egg, if it was meant to allow for more games in the series if Scott wanted to, because originally he wanted to end it with FNAF 3, but hey, either way, it happened, and here we are 6 games and 15 books later. And at 9, Help Wanted ending. The final minigame of Help Wanted is Pizza Party, where you have to navigate your way through the various rooms of the pizzerias to get to your pizza party. The whole time, you're having to avoid animatronics that will sometimes jump scare you, sometimes not. But the real horror comes from when you get to your own party. It wasn't thrown by your friends, it wasn't thrown by your family, it was thrown by Glitch Trap. That's right, Dio Fluffy in the back room. After seeing the ruined bodies of Chica and Bonnie, Glitch Trap appears from behind a curtain. Your final moment is spent walking through that curtain as the screen goes black. Next thing you know, you're on stage with a microphone in your hand. That's right, you've been stuffed. Put in a Freddy suit by none other than William Afton himself. But how? He wasn't supposed to be in the game, right? He was some code that got scanned in by accident. Well, doesn't matter now. That's one of the scariest moments of any game, though. You experiencing what every child has once William has shown them where the other pizzas are kept. Just, Jesus, I don't even, it gives me chills, especially with that dancing at the end that makes it worse. And at 8, the first one. They say a killer's first victim is the most important, since it usually indicates what got them to start killing or other psychological issues that they could use to predict their next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time, that time being 1983. And this is the year that Afton's life started going downhill in the worst way possible. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something that even I fear, okay? I'm not a dad, I think, so I can only imagine how this must have felt. And if that was me, I wouldn't just be burning down restaurants in an attempt to send William to hell. I would be doing that myself, an express route right downstairs. And at 7, Ultimate Custom Night. Ultimate Custom Night was a really interesting turning point for the FNAF series. The original Afton storyline was at a close, and this game was the ultimate capstone to that, with some important lore hints in the form of voice lines that played when you get killed, which is good because it happens a lot. However, this game still fits into the FNAF story and serves as a link between the original story and the new one. The new story being Afton trying to escape the video game world he got himself locked in, or now being Burn Trap or whatever the hell he is. But we originally didn't. But we originally interpreted this game all wrong, since we initially thought that William was burning in hell this time, or stuck in purgatory. But as all Supernatural fans know, purgatory is just a giant forest where monsters kill each other for eternity. But in reality, this must just be what he's seeing in his charging station in the basement of the Pizzaplex, since honestly, that's really the only way that this makes sense. At least if it's still Afton. Eventually, he wakes up, which is him beating 50-20 mode in fights against us, which results in him getting grabbed by the blob and maybe surviving, because we still don't know. And at 6, FNAF 6. William surviving the FNAF 6 fire was much harder to believe when it came to it, at least before Bunny Call was released. However, some fans seem to note that during the final cutscene of FNAF 6, during Henry's speech, while the other animatronics were engulfed by flames, Scraptrap was ahead of them. This was especially hard to believe given that we thought Ultimate Custom Night took place in hell, which is really impossible to get to unless you die. Well, me being the exception. I party with Satan like regularly. He can't hold his liquor. It's kind of weird. I don't understand it. Either way, this was all proven to be true when Bunny Call was released and William was in the hospital in the man in room 1280. However, this eventually was proven also not to be the case because it's FNAF. I gotta say, that's like the biggest troll in the entire series. Or at least like one of the biggest trolls. Like, come on, Scott, really? You kill him off only to make him alive in the books, and then kill him off in that same story, and then you prove that he's alive again in Security Breach? Or maybe he isn't even alive anymore and is just a possessed animatronic? Who knows at this point? Not even Scott. Not even Scott, not even Steel Wool, not even whoever's taking over next. Halfway through into number 5, Midnight Motorist. The Midnight Motorist minigame seems simple enough, but the true horror of this minigame comes from the implications of it. Since in the game files, the minigame is known as Later That Night. Most people akin this game to what happened after William kills Charlotte outside of Fredbear's Family Diner in FNAF 2's Take Cake minigame. But if this is true, this is probably one of the scariest moments in all of FNAF history. This man just killed someone, and then he goes home to his kids. He reprimands his son and abuses him by locking him in his room so much that he had to break a window to escape. Plus, think of all the people driving past him, unaware of the violent crime that he had just committed. It's scary because this is the case in the real world too, technically speaking at least. Anyone we encounter could be a serial killer. And that's a horrific thought. And at 4, Assimilate. The ending of FNAF VR, like the real ending where you fight Glitchtrap, is certainly a scary moment. It also just sounds weird, you know? Like this guy just pops into your VR headset, then takes over your body so that you end up killing for him. It's kind of messed up. And actually not kind of, that's incredibly messed up. She ends up knowing what's going on too. Like she actively talks in hushed tones and about how she can't talk about it to her therapist. So like what the hell's the dynamic here? And by she and her, I mean Vanny, obviously. I mean, like, possessing someone is already pretty messed up, but then, like, causing them to make a rabbit costume because you're still kinky furry is a whole other set of equations. I don't even want to talk about how messed up that is. She knows there's an evil inside her, but she can't do anything about it. She fears for her life, which only makes me wonder what William's been saying in her head, and she knows what's going on. Ah, man, like, well, being willing to lock a kid in a lost and found room until the police arrive, even though you know that William's gonna take over, that's that. Man, you really need a therapist. So does William, honestly. Getting close to the end in number 3, Burn Trap. William appears as the optional yet canon final boss in Security Breach, named Burn Trap according to the game files. He only appears in the canon ending, which is the Afton ending, or the true ending, whatever you want to call it. This form is the result of Vanny downloading William's soul from the digital realm into an old hybrid abomination of an animatronic suit, endoskeleton, and the little remains of his corpse, which just seems to be an extremely burnt scrap trap animatronic, hence the Burn Trap name. Burn Trap's new rotten form appears to be his old but modified, tattered greenish brown spring Bonnie suit that has become even more severely withered, tattered, and burned because, you know, it's been through like 3 fires, with the whole entire lower jaw ripped out, revealing his skull covered in blood with some burnt flesh remaining and some metallic eyes and small pupils. The suit is missing fur with the exception of their chest, hips, legs, upper legs. The rest is extremely burnt. He's very charred. He's like charcoal at this point. Like you can use him to forge a sword. His old endoskeleton has seemingly been replaced with the newer endoskeletons that the Glamrock animatronics have, and that makes him even taller and gives him sharp claws and fingers. So yeah, I don't think I need to explain why this is on this list. But ultimately, in number 2, the Blob. The true ending is seemingly one of the scariest parts of the game because it contains a load of things. After making your way into Burntrap's area, Freddy will be taken over by Afton's newest form, and it's up to Gregory to defeat him by using the 3 monitors to keep burning him. Players will also need to avoid the animatronic enemies that come after Gregory and use the doors to temporarily lock them out if they can. When Springtrap is burned though, the blob, which has like that tentacle monster thing, will attack and make sure that he doesn't get free, which is really weird and horrifying considering how, you know, I don't know if he's dead. Freddy and Gregory will be shown escaping and then sitting on a hill together, but the tentacle monster's identity was never revealed. But originally, after this game, the final Fazbear Frights book would have released, which would have showed us that the tentacle monster we would have been talking about is in fact Baby, or I guess Elizabeth Afton, or it is in the books. But I guess while they share similar elements, they aren't the same thing, because Baby's eyes are off. So it could be that the original 5 missing children are getting their revenge on Afton, since those could be the souls inside of Ennard, which would have been Molten Freddy, and that's seemingly the face that the blob is using, even though it's Funtime Freddy. But you know what? The only way to explain this series fully is to say that every game takes place in a different universe. Every game is separate from each other. That's the only way it works. And finally, and in number 1, the spring locking. I believe we all know this story by now. Everything was going well at first, okay? The cops couldn't pin him down, and he was on his way to immortality. Well, technically he had it already, thanks to the one you should not have killed, but once William discovered Remnant, however, he spiraled. He wanted to use it to fuel his life and truly make him immortal, so in an effort to study it further, William lures the possessed animatronics to the back room where they can't access it, and then he uses it to dismantle them, planning to melt them down into their endoskeletons to fuse that soul metal into his body. However, by doing this, he unknowingly releases the souls of the victims that he claimed however many years ago. I think it might have been like 2 or something, I don't know. Shocked from seeing his literal murder victims, he ends up fleeing into his spring bodysuit, which also makes him feel powerful. However, his haste coupled with the leaking room ended up causing the spring locks to fail, crushing him in torturous agony for the next 30 years. However, he didn't die from this, because as we learned in the Man in Room 1280, he was being kept alive by the spirit of yet another victim. So he's been living in agony for the past 30 years, and that makes him damn well deserving of the number 1 spot. Before you ask, Garvey isn't even a thing, okay? So like, I'm not gonna talk about Garvey. It's not even in the FNAF canon. Why are you asking me about it? Leave me alone. And it's Music Man! Well, some of you may be thinking I'm referring to the giant Music Man spider that we see in the trailers, and I'm assuming later on in Security Breach that is not the case. In fact, I'm referring to the normal Music Man animatronic that just appears to chase you when you enter most of the vents in the game, or at least like the longer vents that are meant to be one way, like the one to the security office in El Chips, or the one way down to the maintenance area on the bottom floor, like the 2 ways that you start to leave the game. But when you first encounter him, the game makes you turn around to see him drop off the ceiling and seemingly come out of nowhere, and then he starts chasing you. And Music Man was already creepy enough just standing behind me, but in this rugged, broken state, he's even worse. And then you learn why he's there. In one of the duffel bags that'll reveal additional lore and references, you can find a security report from Vanessa saying that Music Man cases have been broken, but without any sign of a break-in, indicating that it was someone with security access, which I'm still sure at this point is her. But the fact that Vanny released them into the vents, it kind of makes it extra creepy. And at 9, have a map. After gaining access to the main atrium of the Pizzaplex, which could happen in like the first 45 minutes if you're not an idiot like me and aren't speedrunning, because then it happens in like the first 5 or something. The bot that offers you a map as soon as you get out is firstly not there originally, and it just appears and then jump scares you, and second can actively somehow pull you out of Freddy in order to give you the map. Like, I get it, it's an important part of the game, but come on. Plus, then after Freddy is taken, okay, another map bot shows up to give you an additional map for the security tunnels. But like, what the hell, man? That one came out of absolutely nowhere. Like, the first time Freddy kind of warns you about it, he's like, oh yeah, you can get a map on the 2nd floor. But this time, it's completely uncalled for, and it's actually terrifying, since it's very similar to the jump scare that causes us all to panic, because then the animatronics start spawning behind us after we get caught by a security guard. So, yeah, if I could go back and do the new animatronics list, the staff bots would be at number 1, but particularly the map bot. And at 8, parts and service. The parts and service section of this game did give me slight trauma when I first played it because of parts and service when I played FNAF VR on the channel, since it said to remove Bonnie's left eye and I kept grabbing my left, not Bonnie's. But this time it's much easier, but it being easier doesn't mean I can get it first try, because I am incompetent. I had to try like 3 times, because like the first time I clicked the wires and then it jump scared me. Then I did the wrong pattern because I was too focused on from not clicking the wires, but I also have to admit the headless Freddy jump scare is probably one of the coolest ones in this game. Like, it's not scary because he doesn't have a head, but the actual situation is very intense, especially since we just learned that there is no record of us in the security database, which should be impossible, which leads me to believe that someone, Vanny, wiped us out so that we won't be missed, or that we're a robot crying child, but I still haven't finished the game yet, so I don't know. But to me, this was still a very intense moment, and then you gotta do it like 3 more times if you want to upgrade Freddy. And at 7, low power. With Freddy being our animatronic deterrent mech, it's pretty important that he keeps his charge so that when we need him, we can use him. However, one of the most shocking things is when he runs out of power. Earlier in that game, he is about to run out of power, or at least in my memory, he did run out of power, so he ejected us and then gets into a recharge station. This made me believe that if he runs out of power, he would just drop us on the floor. No, he doesn't. Learned that the hard way when I was glitched and stuck inside of him. So I let the power run out in the hopes that he would drop me, and then when he ran out, he just ripped me out of his stomach and killed me. Which makes me think that it's not his power that we're seeing being depleted, it's his integrity level that we watch go down, but oh well. This is certainly shocking if you don't know it's going to happen, like when Eddie VR on his second channel had the shocking wake-up call when looking at the map. He was just looking at the map, Freddy ran low on power, he ran out and then just pulled him out. He didn't get a low power warning because he was in the map. This was also the same video when he told Freddy that he better not betray him, making things oh so much worse. And at 6, Vanny's room. Now, the path I've taken in my first and current playthrough of Security Breach, since they're both the same playthrough, is going to Phaser Blast or Phaser Quest or whatever the laser tag one is, because I wanted to play laser tag. Also, it totally happened and I flipped out. It was amazing. But on laser tag, or I guess like at the end of laser tag, you can find a secret area through a vent that you have to go back through so Music Man isn't there. But the room you end up finding actually has Vanny in it along with her name on the wall, and it also has a secret Princess Quest machine. At least this time, it's Princess Quest 3. If you don't know, Princess Quest is a minigame present in the mobile version of Help Wanted, which is the way Glitch Trap gets incorporated into the mobile port. However, there's no number, it's just like Princess Quest, so it's the first one. Now apparently there's 3 of them, plus, you know, if Vanny saw you, you'd be dead, which just adds to the kind of like scare factor. And what adds to the mystery is that you can find a lore bag in Bonnie Bowl that tells you about a Princess Quest 1 machine hidden somewhere in the building. I'm guessing like the actual Fazcade room. But since Princess Quest 1 and 3 are here, I'm assuming that there's also a Princess Quest 2, which I think reveals not only more lore, but potentially another ending. Since Vanny is sleeping next to one of the machines, it makes it seem kind of important. And the lore is the scariest thing out of everything in this series. Halfway through into number 5, Broken Freddy. Now, as if fixing Freddy wasn't enough, he also has to go through something that makes him need to be fixed, right? Well, yeah, that's how it works. And the first time you see Freddy laying down broken because he couldn't get to parts and service is so depressing and worrying that you might end up losing your animatronic repellent suit of mech armor. Unless you aren't sure if they're going to end up betraying you and end up not getting emotionally attached to Freddy. Wow, I sound like I have trust issues now. Maybe I should go to therapy. But like then again, like therapists are like the English teachers of the brain. They like try to find like hidden meanings in like everything, like the symbolism that like the author intended. Like no, like the reason you want to sleep in a blanket is because you want to be back in your mother's womb kind of analysis, and it's like no, because I need it to be the right temperature, bro. But honestly, after seeing Freddy like that, I maybe really do need therapy, but for that, not for anything else. The actual Broken Freddy moment is very sad, and then having to go out alone and face all these things without your boy is pretty damn terrifying. Especially because at this point, Vanny was introduced and used a couple times before you could actually get back into Freddy. Also, what happens like almost immediately after this is pretty horrifying. And at 4, Trash Compactor. Now after figuring out what I needed to do, destroying my main Chica was the first thing I did. I already blew her back out, so I might as well finish the job, right? Well, let me tell you that it was still a very intense scene. Firstly, I thought that you would have to actually like lure her into the trash compactor instead of just pushing a button when she's not close and starting a cutscene. So I was trying to actually like lure her into it after placing the Monty stuff because she wasn't trying to eat it. So I was like stunning her and like having her chase me, and that was terrifying doing that. But then the cutscene that plays when you actually stop being a moron is even scarier, since this is the scene that we had in the trailer where it looks like a giant pillar fell on her, but no, you're actually crushing her in a trash compactor. And you as like a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old or however the gold Gregory is, are able to kick off her beak, and then she gets crushed again. But when she gets sucked into the actual like trash chute, she pulls you with her, which is really horrifying, especially for me, someone who's afraid of trash, which is why I don't watch. Yeah, I'm not gonna finish that sentence. That's currently where I ended my last stream, but the day before this goes live, I'm streaming FNAF again on my Twitch, so I guess I'll be past that when this comes out, but oh well. At this point, I don't know what happens after that, but I'm sure it will be even more terrifying. Getting close to the end into number 3, glitches. Now, at the time of scripting, I've played around 7 hours of this game. I've been uploading the videos on my personal channel. However, in that 3rd hour, I managed to break the game multiple times, and this was one of the scariest moments of the early game for me. So I'd like to share my experience with you because that was interesting. After finding El Chips, I come out and I call Freddy over. He runs over, but he's stuck on the other side of some barriers. I still don't know how he got there. He teleports behind me, but I'm still unable to get inside him. So I run a couple meters and I call him again, but that's when a second Glamrock Freddy shows up. So I got 2 Freddys, okay, they're about to double team me, but I can't get in either of them. So I make my way to the vent system at the bottom of the map, and I go out that way instead of going through El Chips. I started getting chased by Music Man, and I slide down the fence, and then I get to the bottom and seemingly nothing loaded. Just a couple of like garage doors. So I get intrigued and start looking around, only for me to fall through the floor and then have the level load above me. So obviously, the next step is to jump out of the map and fall for a few seconds, but then I'm in a room with a whole bunch of colored doors. I thought it was a secret area, but then somehow I'm suddenly back behind the security desk of the daycare again. Yeah, I press the button to get out, the same scripted scene plays where I get kicked out and then all the animatronics are coming to gangbuster me. But this time, at least Freddy's working. So I go back into the vent and get out, but then Music Man starts chasing me again, but another Music Man is ahead of me in the vents from last time. I don't understand, but it was terrifying. Penultimately, in at number 2, daycare. Now, the daycare section of the game is certainly an interesting one, because this dude is all kinds of creepy in probably the worst ways possible. But that whole daycare sequence, in my opinion, is one of the scariest sections of the game, or at least that I've experienced so far. The lights being completely out and the desperate need to turn them back on is surely something that I don't want to relive. Like, it's so creepy, and I don't know how else to describe it. It's absolute pure terror. The fact that this is a children's caretaker that is literally killing me because I'm up past my bedtime is one of the most horrific concepts I think I've seen, like, in practice. Like, who the absolute living hell thought this would be a good idea? And not only that, but also, like, it's like in the first part of the game. This is before you even get to the main atrium of the Pizzaplex. Plus, there's like a flashlight battery upgrade that you can get that I totally missed because it's in like some hidden area at the back, and I'm still mad about that. I don't really use my flashlight anyway, and I recharge it basically every time I can. But this guy is like the next Afton, okay? He's hella creepy, and he legit reminds me of my uncle. And finally, in at number 1, endos. Now this is some horrifying. The endo section of Security Breach before you can enter parts and service is so goddamn freaky. I don't know how it's possible. I'm glad that like I don't have like a fear of robots, otherwise this would have had me shivering under my desk. Having animatronics chase you is one thing, okay? Having bare endoskeletons chasing you with no casing on them that just move when you don't look at them like FNAF weeping angels is some of the most nightmare-inducing shit I have seen since FNAF 4. And yes, that's a joke because FNAF 4 is all about a nightmare, but still, they only move when you don't look at them. Plus, when you get the security upgrade that you're supposed to get so you can get into the parts and service area, you turn on like 10 additional endos at once who end up chasing you until you can get somewhere safe. Like, you can hide and they will eventually leave, but anyone who's robophobic is going to absolutely despise and loathe this section. I'm only arachnophobic and I still hated that. So, good luck.